Hello. There have been some more slight reveals for Warhammer Quest Dark Water, and given that I am such a massive fan of Warhammer Quest, and I'm really excited about this release, I thought I would just jump on and talk very quickly about what we know so far. Now, it seems like the actual reveal that was posted on Warhammer Community was in response to some leaks that have been out there in the wider world. I personally don't tend to follow leaks and rumours and that sort of stuff. I prefer it to come through the official means and to be released when it's ready, but I do like this kind of response from Warcom. I think it's a good way to sort of take the reins of the story and maintain ownership of the narrative as this stuff is slowly revealed over time. And the way they've done that this time is by posting a rotten potato can picture of the full board and contents for Warhammer Quest Dark Water. Now, it really is a rotten potato can picture, so we can't really get any specific details from this image, but we can get a sense of the entirety, the totality of the release, and it looks really interesting. Obviously, there are a number of heroes, including what appears to be a Kurnoth Herald, and there are also plenty of bad guys on the other side of the board. Obviously, we know that there's going to be a load of Nurgle, a load of demons, but there also seem to be some really small guys over here as well, and I'm very intrigued by those. They look like maybe Nurglings or Chaos Familiars, or even something in the sort of Gargoylian kind of space would be really super interesting. The main thrust of the article is to reveal the 4 heroes in the set. Now, we'd already seen these in the cover art reveal, but we're given names and a little bit more in this post. Inara Scion, the Cleansing Blade, appears to be the priestess character. Brentillis, the Renegade Saint, is one of the knightly characters from the box. And then Edmark Valoran is called the Manticore Knight. This is the kind of Bretonnian-looking character. And then there's Drolf Ironhead, the Grizzled Explorer, who appears to be a dispossessed Duardin, but kind of unlike anything we've seen in Age of Sigmar before now. There is actually a brief window of time in which we can vote to reveal more for one of these specific heroes. If you can go to the Warcom article, which I've linked down below, before 9 AM UK time tomorrow, you'll be able to vote on which one gets fully revealed in the next article. I have actually gone for Inara Scion, the Cleansing Blade, because I'm really interested in finding out a little bit more about this particular character. Where are they from, and what is their background? The article actually describes these as 4 classic Warhammer questing archetypes, and that is fair. This kind of character design has appeared in pretty much every quest, but I do think it's interesting to describe the inclusion of a knight as a classic Warhammer Quest archetype, because that's not really the case. Even going back to HeroQuest, which we will come back to in a moment, there has not really been a knight in the base box. It's normally a barbarian who takes that kind of character role, the sort of aggressive leader, martial prowess kind of character. And if you take a look at Warhammer Quest 1995, the original quest, that has a barbarian as well. Where you will find a knight is in 1989's Advanced HeroQuest, which did have the elf and the dwarf and the wizard, and then a knight instead of a barbarian, which, I don't know, I just think is interesting. Of course, Silver Tower dramatically upped the number of heroes who were included in the box, and it had both a barbarian in the Dark Oath Chieftain and a knight in the Stormcast Eternal. So, I guess, as far as Age of Sigmar Warhammer Quest archetypes go, the knight has been there since the beginning. Now, I mentioned HeroQuest there, and there is another reason to bring that up, and that is because this version of Warhammer Quest Dark Water appears to take place entirely on a single board. That is very HeroQuest. Obviously, the original HeroQuest board was a huge double board that folded out, and then you could amend the actual layouts of the dungeons using all of the different collapsed rubble and doors and all that sort of stuff. But here we have just a single board section, which is kind of reminiscent of Warhammer Quest Lost Relics, which is why I've got this on the shelf here, because that actually had single board pieces that you would put a couple together to create the dungeons. Now, the difference here is that this was taking the old tiled approach from Warhammer Quest and then just mashing them all into a single board and just not having the bits in the middle missing so that you could rotate them and you could do lots of different configurations. It was a neat way to do an easy to set up, accessible version of Warhammer Quest, which is what Lost Relics is. It's an introductory version of the game. So why would they go for that for a full Warhammer Quest release? Well, there's something else interesting about this single board piece, and that's that maybe it's not just a board at all, it could be a book. If you look down here at the bottom, you can see that the actual board appears to be really quite thick, and then in the middle, there is what appears to be a spine. So is it possible that this is actually just a double-page spread of a book that has been opened up to play on? Now, there is precedence for this, if not in Warhammer Quest, then in a game like Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, which features a spiral-bound campaign book where the actual maps for the adventures are on the pages and you play directly on the book. That feels like it could be a really interesting innovation for Warhammer Quest, a way to really speed up the layout and the setup and then the breakdown of the game. And it also means that you're containing the entire thing to a much smaller area. You could potentially play it in the same way as Underworlds, which we know is a really accessible game. You can play it on a table at a pub or in a restaurant or in a cafe, theoretically, or a much smaller home setup, rather than having to have a huge 6x4 kitchen table on which to play. Now, of course, there has been a continued move at Games Workshop towards smaller and smaller playing surfaces, player areas. We've seen that with things like Kill Team, Underworlds, Warcry, lots of games that have a slightly reduced footprint, and we've seen it in the main games as well. Even recently, with the release of Combat Patrol and Spearhead for Age of Sigmar and 40k, they are designed to be played on much smaller boards using predetermined terrain and all of that sort of stuff. So could it be that same line of thought being applied to Warhammer Quest? Now, I absolutely love the tiles from the original Quest and from Silver Tower and all the other games. And I actually think Silver Tower did a good job in having you sort of move the tiles forward. In Warhammer Quest, I can't remember, actually, to be honest, if you were supposed to remove the tiles from the very back of the dungeon as you progressed. In my head, I am just remembering many, many games when I was younger that just sprawled out across an entire table onto the floor all over the dining room, because we just let them all build up and you could just run any direction that you wanted. And it ended up being a massive, massive board. I loved it, but it is really busy when you let it get that way. So perhaps this is going to be a really neat way to keep the game much smaller, more condensed, and more controlled. So that's all we've got right now. There's not an awful lot more information besides the heroes and the sort of nature of the board. Plenty of cool teases and stuff to look forward to. I'm looking forward to finding out more about the particular heroes when that's revealed. And I'm going to go away and speculate at length about this board. I think this could be really interesting. I love playing HeroQuest in all of its different forms. So this one bringing something new, like a fold-out book version of the board, potentially, that's really interesting to me. I can't wait to find out more about that. So let's wait and see. And for now, I'm just going to go and take another look at those pictures.